So I want to talk to you about who we are as salespeople of memory care, and that whenever we're presenting memory care to somebody, that we need to see ourselves in a certain light, and we need to guide a conversation in a certain way. And the way that I would like to have that be in your mind is in the form of a tree. And I want you to actually see us as salespeople as trees. Memory care sales, we are trees. Now the question would be, what is a tree? Who is a tree? What a tree is dependent upon who you're asking. If you're asking somebody who is not a tree, a customer for instance, they're going to tell you that the purpose of a tree is to give oxygen. If I see a tree anywhere I go, I'm going to say that tree is converting carbon dioxide into oxygen. And trees are cleaning the air. They're allowing me to breathe again. They're giving me the ability to take a breath, to breathe. That's the way a customer sees and needs us as a tree. Now, silly as it sounds, to continue with this tree analogy, I want you to really think about yourself as a tree. And if you were a tree, if you were to ask an actual tree, what is your purpose as a tree? A tree is likely going to say that my purpose is to bear fruit. My purpose is to multiply. My purpose is to continue to grow into other trees and maybe have the best possible fruit available that animals and birds are going to want that fruit and be able to carry my seed to other places and to be able to multiply into more trees. So we want to grow as salespeople. We want there to be others that are going to take part in our product. So to continue with that silly analogy, as silly as that sounds, whenever you're sitting down with a customer, I really want that idea of a tree to be ever present in your mind. Because when you look at a tree, and I've got an actual little tree here, when you look at a tree and the design of a tree, it starts with your roots. You have then the trunk of the tree. This is a very tiny baby tree here. A trunk of a tree. Then you have several branches that branch off. And then eventually those branches are going to form leaves. And then those leaves are eventually going to also have the potential for fruit to be on them. And of course the actual seed of going on to be another tree. So when you're talking with somebody, I want you to build a tree in your mind. And this is the meat of what I'm trying to say. You need to start off with the roots of a conversation. Whenever you're sitting down talking with somebody, the roots are going to be the ability to make them feel a little more comfortable. The only way that you're going to have somebody feel comfortable is to ask their permission. That's the key word. Ask for permission. That's the roots of the tree. That's going to allow you to say, I want somebody to feel a little more comfortable with this conversation and not be closed off. So you'll be asking permission for everything at the beginning. You want to ask permission to ask questions. Do you mind if I ask you a few quick questions to better understand your situation? Do you mind if I ask a couple of questions about mom to understand a little bit more about what's going on? These are questions that there's going to be an immediate yes to, but it's a necessary yes. Do you mind if I take notes? Do you mind if I get you something to drink? I'm going to have a bottle of water myself. Those types of questions, even though they seem meaningless, because the answer to the question of, do you mind if I ask you some questions about your mother or your father or for your grandmother or for your husband or for your wife, it's going to be an obvious yes. That's the reason why I'm sitting here. Of course you can ask me questions about my loved one because I'm seeking a place for my loved one to be able to have quality of life reestablished. Of course the answer is going to be yes. But it's a necessary yes to receive. Not only is somebody saying yes in that moment, which is a positive thing, but the roots of the tree are digging in with the idea of there not being a barrier there. You won't have the ability to ask the questions that need to be asked without being able to first get permission to ask those questions. So the permission to ask questions and asking permission for basically anything at the beginning, you're going to get a yes from somebody. Do you mind if I take notes? No, but sure, that would be great if you take notes. No problem. I don't mind at all. And they're going to continue their conversation. The reason why you're asking permission to take notes is that now it's not a question of why are you taking notes? What are you taking notes for? Are you writing down what I'm saying? I don't even know if I want to. I just came here for some questions about how much it costs for my loved one to live here. I don't really need to stay for the whole ordeal of whatever this is. I don't need you to take notes. Why are you taking notes? Are you writing a book about me? I'm really very private. I'm very guarded. I don't feel comfortable with you writing notes. But if you ask permission, then the guard has been dropped. And there is the ability to say, that's great that you're taking notes. In fact, asking permission to take notes is also going to allow somebody to have the attention drawn to the fact that you are taking notes, that you are actively listening. You can't imagine how many times a family member has gone to another location and they sit down with somebody and they take no notes. There's almost a callousness that is there, that you don't care about the things that I'm telling you. This is my everyday existence. I'm telling you about how my wife has walked out of the house and we've gone now to 24-hour caregivers, and she had her first fall 4 years ago, and now I'm having to just recently take care of some incontinence needs that were not present before, and I don't know why they're here now. You should be taking notes. You should be taking notes of this because this is important to me and I'm sharing my heart with you. Asking permission are the roots of the conversation. It is the roots of this tree, and it's so important. The tree doesn't start to grow without there being the ability to have a yes on asking for permission. So now you have the roots of your tree, and some very simple things have happened. You've asked for permission to ask a few questions. Do you mind if I take notes? Do you mind if I get you something to drink? And there is a series of yeses that people have said. But now that exterior has melted a little bit, that ice that may be there, because I'm going to hold on to my loved one's cards very closely, and I'm not going to show you my cards. But if you allow there to be the opportunity to simply ask permission, things will go smoothly. So now you have the roots of your tree. And what happens next with the tree is that you have the trunk of your tree. So this is a very small trunk, but you have a trunk to your tree that will start to grow. And what happens with the trunk of the tree? The trunk of the tree is very different from the roots. You've got your established roots. The trunk, you are now going to ask those core questions. You're going to ask open-ended questions that are going to start to give you a foundation for what this family's unique needs are. So the open-ended questions that you want to start with are the ones that are on your form, and that is questions like, tell me about what's going on. Tell me about what brought you in today. Tell me about what's currently happening. And let them talk. Let them share just the most basic question of, why are you here? That's essentially the question. You don't want to ask it like that, but tell me about the current situation. And let them share, and let them talk, and let them express every aspect about what is currently on their mind and how they want to express it. And then ask them the questions of, well, can you take me through what a normal day is like for your loved one? Asking them questions like, tell me about what is your greatest concern at this time? These open-ended questions that are going to allow somebody to talk. And this is going to build the trunk of your tree. So you have your roots established, and now you're building that trunk. The way that you do that is with those pre-formulated questions that you have in your mind, that you have on your form, that you are going to ask everybody that walks into your community. But it's an open-ended question that allows for there to be the conversation that gets started to where you are, again, a very important thing to keep in mind is that you want to be speaking about 10% of the time. You want to be listening 90% of the time. So you want to be actively listening, taking notes, but you're asking those core questions. Those core questions are going to lead you down a number of paths. So as you are asking the question, tell me about what's your biggest concern at this time? And they might share, well, I'm really concerned about finances. I'm really concerned about, my dad's had a number of falls recently. I'm really concerned about X, Y, or Z. You now know of another question that you need to ask from that. Whenever you ask a question like, tell me about what a typical day is like for your loved one. Well, whenever they, I don't really know what to tell you. I guess they watch television all day, and then they eat, and they go to sleep. And then you need to break it down and say, well, no, tell me, like if you were to take me through step by step from morning, noon, till evening, tell me about what a typical day is like for your loved one. You're asking these core questions that are going to form this trunk. And they're going to mention things that might become something that is a part of another question that you're going to follow up with. You have your standard questions, but those are the core questions, the trunk of your tree. As you build that trunk, you're going to hear the next steps of the next questions that you're going to be asking. Those questions that you'd like to branch off into additional questions. And that becomes the next part of the tree, and that is the branches. So the branches of your tree are going to be where you really start to build a relationship with somebody. That's going to be where they realize that you were listening and that you do care about what the needs of their loved one are. So these core questions, all that is doing is allowing you to write down the responses that you need to have in order to build your branching questions. So based on what you gathered from those core questions, maybe it was mentioned that mom used to be a seamstress. So you're going to ask one of two different types of branching questions. One is a direct question. So a direct branching question would be, hey, you mentioned your mom was a seamstress. Was she a seamstress here in this area? Did she grow up around here? Asking questions like that, where there's going to be a direct answer that you're seeking for that. Then there's also the open-ended branching question. So you mentioned that your mom was a seamstress. Hey, tell me more about that. And there's a pause. And that's where, whenever you're branching and whenever you're asking those core questions, let there be a pause. Let there be the ability to not fill in the blank. Let them fill in the blank. Let them be able to talk and discuss how they want to present the answer to that question. But there's going to be any number of things. You mentioned that Dad had a fall. Tell me about the fall. Tell me about what happened there. You mentioned that things were different after your mom's husband passed away, and then that was 3 years ago. Is that correct? Tell me more about that. Tell me about you mentioned that Dad loves talking about the fact that he served in the military. Can you tell me about which branch he served in? No pun intended. Can you tell me about which branch of the military he was in? What was he in the Navy? Was he in the Army? Find out those things that you can ask the follow-up questions on, because not only is it going to show that you care about those questions, but you're going to dig deeper on the legacy of that individual, and you're going to dig deeper on the direct needs of the family. So you're branching and branching and branching, and you want to continue to say, tell me more about that, tell me more. Don't stop with tell me more, because it's going to lead from one question to another question to another question. If the time is there, if you are aware of somebody's time and they have the ability to sit down and talk with you, let this be a time of healing that is more about a conversation that they can share about their loved one's history and past and current situation. Let this be a time of healing through conversation, through continually branching questions. So you want those branches to continue to shoot off of that core trunk of the tree that you have built, that's standing upon the firm roots that you have placed in the ground. You want those branches to branch off until there are no more branches to be had. And as you're branching, you're going to find that eventually there is an opportunity for a leaf to develop on a branch. So that is the next part of your tree. Those are the leaves of your tree. Now, with the leaves of the tree, I want you to keep in mind that a leaf is present right before there is fruit on the tree. So at all times, I want you to have those married together, the leaves and the fruit of the tree. So the leaves of your tree, as you have built the core questions through the trunk, you've branched off into additional questions, and then the leaves of your tree are going to be discussing and discovering the needs of that individual. So as you branch off, you're going to find out different things that are a direct need for their loved one. So you've branched off and you found out that Dad had a fall then, and he had a fall at this other location, and that is a concern of theirs, is falls for Dad. We need to find a way that there can be a little bit more security around Dad's needs. How can we help or work with that? Maybe through physical therapy or whatever it might be. Don't worry about what the answer of the need is, but you want to discover the need. You found out that mom was a seamstress. So through the fact that mom is a seamstress, you've also learned that she was actually in charge of her own shop, that she had several employees that worked for her, and everybody in the town knew who she was, and she was the only one that could do X, Y, or Z. You found out that there's a level of independence there for mom, and that she has a need to be able to work with others and to continue to help others, and maybe even continue to volunteer. She has a need to have continued purpose at all times, as we all do. But for that lady who is a seamstress that owned her own shop, now you have honed down a direct need of the fact that she needs to have the ability to maybe continue her life's work. She needs to have the ability to know that others still appreciate the quality of her work. She needs to have all of her amazing art be celebrated. You have discovered needs through asking those questions. Needs that are very different from the individual that sat down and told you that my mom needs care and I need to find a location for my mom. Asking those branching questions, you're going to discover unique needs. Dad, you mentioned that Dad served in the Navy. Is that right? The Navy? Wonderful. Well, I'll tell you, we have other residents here that also served in the Navy too. Tell me more about that. You're going to branch and branch and branch, and now you're going to find out that their dad has a direct need to talk about their legacy and what their military service meant to them and how important that is. And we find out that while your dad continues to talk about that, he still goes to the VFW, he still goes to different group meetings where he's able to discuss that. Anytime he's with another veteran, they have really fruitful conversation. Now you found a need. Dad needs to talk about that aspect of his past. It's very important to him. You would not find out those needs, you would not have a leaf develop on your tree unless you have branched out and then formed those leaves. So the leaves are actually identifying a need. And then when you've identified a need, that's when your tree can bear fruit. And that's the purpose of your tree, is to bear fruit. The fruit that the tree gives, that you as a tree are giving, is the real reward of all of that time that was spent. It is matching a solution to that need. So you're going to find a solution and present that to somebody. That is the fruit of your tree. So you have your tree, you have your root system that you've put into the ground, your core questions that you've asked, the branching off of all of those questions. You've then developed several wonderful leaves, each of those leaves developing a specific need that was identified. So you've identified all of those different needs, and then now this wonderful fruit has developed on your tree. It's developed because you have discovered what those needs are. And then as you've discovered what those needs are, you are then going to needs match and literally pull the fruit from the tree and be able to hand it to that customer that's sitting there with you and be able to give them those direct solutions that they're looking for, the partnership that they're needing. You're giving them the choices that they wanted in that moment. You're giving them the ability to have what they really came there for and that they didn't even know you were able to offer. So, you mentioned Dad has a great connection to his military past. He served in the Navy, and that he likes to talk about that. Well, I want to tell you that we do wonderful things in regards to legacy validation. We share the personal life stories of our residents on a regular basis. So we have celebrate a life ceremony for somebody, which we would love to have an opportunity to have with your father and be able to have him come be here and talk about his military past and be able to show everyone his medals and things like that, be able to have those pictures shared, to be able to have those discussions had. And then, you know what? We have two other residents, and they too served in the Navy. So I really want you to take this fruit that was just developed. This is, of course, figuratively, but you're presenting that fruit to them in a very specialized way because you have just needs matched exactly what they need for their dad that they didn't even realize that they needed. They found out, this delicious fruit, they found out that what was necessary is that I needed to not only discuss that aspect of my loved one, but I need you to tell me that you have the ability to offer that on another level, and I need to know that that solution is something much better than what is currently happening. Oh, you mentioned that mom has had an increased number of falls recently. And I know that that's one of the concerns that you had, and apparently that happened at the previous location that she was at. It happened at home, and then you had her back at home for another period of time. I know that's happened again, and I'll tell you, as you know, and you've learned, falls can and do happen. It's going to be a possibility to happen anywhere. We have falls that happen here, of course, as well. But I want you to know that what we would do is we would try and work specifically with a physical therapist. And you mentioned that mom hasn't worked with physical therapy, but it's going to be a difference to work with physical therapy and occupational therapy together and see how that matches up, because I think whenever you've described the way that she's getting up and out of a chair, it sounds like there can be something that might be able to be modified there, but that's where I would have our nurse come in and talk to you and be able to discuss that. And that's something we can do whenever we do an evaluation to be able to discover the needs of your loved one. But I really think that that's going to be something you might find to be very beneficial. And it could eventually be something that is going to help to limit some of the number of falls that might be happening for mom. And at least it would be an option that we can provide here, because our physical therapy team and occupational therapy team are great. And you're handing that piece of fruit to them that they did not even realize that was a direct need that they wanted to have a solution for. And you hand that to them, and now the conversation has changed, because you could have just jumped right to that. Oh, don't even worry about that. We can do this, we can do that, and we're going to take care of these needs, and you don't have to worry about medication management. We're going to offer all of these great things to your loved one. It only matters if they got to share, if they got to talk, and if they got to have their feelings expressed and vented. It only mattered if you were able to really dig deep on what the specific need was. And it only mattered that from those leaves of the tree that came off of those branches, that you were able to actually give them a personalized piece of fruit in that moment. That's the only thing that matters to somebody. And when you hand them that fruit and you're plucking that fruit from the tree, all of those little pieces that have developed from your conversation, that is what is going to allow somebody to say, I feel comfortable with my loved one being here. This is the location for them. This is where I know that they need to be, because you've listened to me and you know how to express that to the other team members that are here. And I did not know that you offer that. But it is the location that presents them with the tree, the ability to have that person that's going to give them oxygen again, give them the ability to breathe again, give them the ability to not only breathe life again, but be able to breathe their loved one's legacy, to be able to share that, to be able to have a burden lifted from them. That's what somebody is needing from a tree. And then we as salespeople, we want to multiply. We want there to be more people coming to our communities, which would develop them to have additional happiness, and they're out there talking to others about how wonderful the product that we offer is, that they become a tree themselves. So that's how you become a successful tree. That is how you organize your conversation as a successful tree. Your roots, your trunk, your branching, your development of leaves, and then ultimately that delicious fruit that develops from the tree. That is how you have a meaningful conversation with someone, so that they are willing to finally accept the fruit that comes from the tree.